It was supposed to be a routine trip, a backup aircraft, a stand-in for Air Force One, flying ahead of the President of the United States. But on this foggy, rain-swept night, something went terribly wrong. In the darkness, just miles from its destination, the jet carrying top administration officials, Secret Service agents, and the press corps simply vanished from the radar. It was a crash that would claim 35 lives, a disaster that unfolded in the shadow of a presidential visit, and a tragedy that almost included the president himself, Lyndon B. Johnson. This is the story of the crash of Air Force 272, the plane that almost killed a U.S. president. On the evening of April 18, 1968, a specially configured Boeing 707, designated Air Force 272, was on final approach to the Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin, Texas. On board were 80 souls, White House staffers, key advisors, members of the elite White House press corps, and a contingent of Secret Service agents. They were the advance party for President Lyndon B. Johnson, who was scheduled to fly from Washington, D.C. to his Texas ranch for the Easter weekend. The plan was simple. This backup aircraft, essentially a mobile White House, would land, set up communications, and secure the area, ensuring everything was ready for the arrival of Air Force One, carrying the president just a few hours later. The flight from D.C. had been uneventful, a typical journey filled with the quiet hum of government business at 30,000 feet. But as they descended into the thick, soupy Texas night, the situation rapidly deteriorated. The weather was a nightmare. A stubborn storm system had parked itself over central Texas, unleashing sheets of rain and shrouding the landscape in a dense, disorienting fog. Visibility was near zero. The pilots, Colonel James Cross and Major Paul E. Vivaret, were flying on instruments alone, relying entirely on their gauges and the guidance of air traffic controllers on the ground. At 9:47 p.m., the crew radioed the control tower, reporting their position as they began their final approach. It was the last anyone would ever hear from them. On the radar screen in the tower, the bright blip representing Air Force 272 crept steadily toward the runway. Then, without warning, it disappeared. The controllers called out into the static, their voices growing more urgent with each unanswered transmission. Air Force 272, do you copy? Air Force 272, what is your position? Silence. The room fell into a stunned quiet. The impossible had happened. The president's plane had vanished. Aboard Air Force One, still hours away, President Johnson received the chilling news. The backup plane was missing. For a terrifying moment, the fate of dozens of his closest aides and friends hung in the balance. The president ordered his own aircraft to divert, circling in a holding pattern high above the storm as a frantic search began on the ground. In the darkness and driving rain, rescue crews fanned out from the airbase, their searchlights cutting futilely through the fog. The crash site was found on a remote cattle ranch, just a few miles short of the runway. The scene was one of utter devastation. The massive Boeing 707 had slammed into a low, rocky hillside, carving a deep scar into the muddy earth. The fuselage had broken apart, scattering wreckage and personal belongings across hundreds of yards. The jet fuel had ignited, turning the rainy night into a hellish inferno. First responders were met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Against all odds, amidst the twisted metal and burning debris, there were survivors. Stunned, injured, and disoriented, they staggered from the wreckage, their clothes torn and soaked in rain and jet fuel. In the end, of the 80 people on board, 45 miraculously survived the impact and the fire. But for 35 others, the journey had ended in tragedy. The investigation began immediately, conducted by the Air Force under a cloud of national grief and intense scrutiny. How could a state-of-the-art aircraft, flown by an experienced crew, simply fly into a hill? The answer, pieced together from the flight data recorder and survivor interviews, was a chilling combination of human error and treacherous weather. The pilots, descending through the thick fog and rain, had been executing a ground-controlled approach, a procedure where controllers on the ground provide verbal instructions to guide the plane down. However, the investigation concluded that the crew had descended too early and too quickly. They had busted their minimum descent altitude, the lowest altitude they were cleared to fly before having the runway in sight. Flying blind in the storm, they were far lower than they should have been. The instruments in the cockpit were functioning perfectly. The altimeter would have shown their dangerously low altitude. But for reasons that can never be fully known, perhaps distraction, perhaps disorientation from the storm, perhaps an over-reliance on the controller's guidance, they continued their descent. The plane was a mere 250 feet above the ground when it should have been closer to 1,500. By the time the pilots saw the dark shape of the hillside looming in their landing lights, it was already too late. The crash of Air Force 272 sent shockwaves through the aviation and presidential security communities. The most immediate and lasting improvement came in the form of technology. The disaster starkly highlighted the limitations of relying solely on verbal commands from the ground in poor weather. It became a powerful catalyst for the widespread adoption of the Instrument Landing System, or ILS. Unlike the ground-controlled approach, ILS provides pilots with direct, continuous, and precise visual guidance right in the cockpit, showing them their exact position relative to the runway's centerline and the correct glide path. This system drastically reduces the potential for human error in the critical final moments of a flight. Furthermore, the crash led to a revolution in cockpit resource management and crew training. Airlines and military air arms alike placed a renewed emphasis on standardized procedures, clear communication between pilots, and cross-checking instrument readings, ensuring that a single error by one crew member would be caught by another. The era of the godlike captain was over, replaced by a team-based approach to safety that has since saved countless lives. Air Force One and its support fleet became the most technologically advanced aircraft in the world, with redundant systems, advanced ground proximity warning alarms, and crews trained to the highest possible standard, ensuring that a tragedy like this would never happen again. Today, the crash of Air Force 272 is a largely forgotten chapter in American history, overshadowed by the tumultuous events of 1968. Yet its legacy endures. For the families of the 35 who were lost, it remains a source of profound and personal grief. For the survivors, it is a memory of terror and a testament to the fragility of life. For President Johnson, who had narrowly avoided being on that flight, it was a deeply personal tragedy. He knew many of the victims personally, and the what-ifs of that night haunted him. What if his schedule had been different? What if he had chosen to fly with his advance team? The crash serves as a stark reminder that even with the immense power and protection of the presidency, no one is immune to chance, to weather, or to the devastating consequences of a single, tragic mistake. It's a story not just of a plane crash, but of the invisible systems and silent improvements born from disaster, the safety protocols that now protect every person who flies, and the solemn truth that progress is often paid for in the most heartbreaking of currencies.